Now, I'm going to be getting started tonight on Google's Keyword Planner, and I have provided the link for this in the guidebook for you guys, just in case you have not received the link for that guidebook. It can be found on the Amazon Masterclass page. I will add that link into the chat box here for you guys. All the ebooks and then the video recordings for this class will be posted on that particular page. So the Google Keyword Planner, you may already be familiar with the Google Keyword Tool. This was the old keyword research tool that Google made available, and it's been replaced by this Keyword Planner now. They're still essentially the same thing. They still provide you with basically the same type of information, but the Keyword Planner kind of simplifies all that information for you. And I actually like the more simplified version because while it's kind of less information overall, it's actually giving me the information that I was typically looking to find in the keyword tool. So in that regard, I actually like it better. Now there's a couple of main differences with it that I will try to point out as I go along. But for now, just to get started with, I'm going to go ahead and basically take the niche idea that I have come up with from looking at the Amazon products and doing my Amazon research. And I'm going to take that keyword and put it into the keyword planner. Now I'm just going to start with a basic keyword that kind of summarizes the product that I am trying to target with this website here. So I'm just going to type in down comforter for this particular search, and I will simply click on the Get Ideas button. Now immediately this shows me a long listing on this first page here. There's actually two different tabs here that you can take a look at. This first one that's automatically shown is the ad group ideas, but then there is also a keyword ideas. So I'm actually going to walk you guys through both of these and talk to you about them and how I actually use them when it comes to researching for my own sites. Now to start with, the Ad Group Ideas tab that it's already on here, this basically takes all of the relational keyword phrases that Google can come up with, and it sorts them all into a variety of different categories, what they call ad groups. Each of these ad groups then contains a certain number of keyword phrases in it. You can see that number in the parentheses out beside it here. Now, what I'm looking for when I'm looking through these ad group ideas is to actually find something that would work for my website, but obviously pretty much any of these terms could really work with my site. So how do I really go about selecting a good phrase to try to target, or a handful of different phrases to try to target? What I'll actually do is just start by clicking on one of them. Once you click on any one of these ad group ideas, it will actually expand and show you all of the individual keyword phrases that are found within that ad group. And then over on the right hand side, you have this average monthly search count. Now this count is telling you how many people actually go to Google and search for this particular term within the course of any given month. But this is an average for the last year's worth of traffic. So the actual month-to-month traffic could really be a little different from this number, but it's So it's not necessarily an exact number, but it's more or less meant to be um, an estimated traffic number, something you could expect to receive if you were trying to target this particular phrase. Now, you're not going to get every single searcher, even if you're the #1 result on Google. You're not going to get every single one of these people to come to your site. At best, you might be lucky to get perhaps 30 to 40% of them, and that's even if you're #1. So a lot of people will kind of get blinded by this fact, and they'll think, in order to get any decent amount of traffic on my site, I'm going to have to target something that has a lot of potential traffic on it, something like this phrase that has 5,400 searches. They think if I could get 30–40% of that number every month on my site, then I'd probably have enough traffic to actually be referring some regular sales. Well, while that is a good train of thought, you do need a certain amount of traffic on your site every month, and obviously more traffic is better than less traffic, but the really important thing to consider is how much work is it going to take to actually be able to target that particular keyword phrase, to actually get into the top 10 rankings for that phrase. And that, I believe, is where a lot of people end up going wrong. They underestimate the amount of work that is required to get a good ranking. So I actually tend to look at the phrases that are less than 1,000 searches a month. Now, talking about these numbers that are being displayed right here, this is actually one of the main differences between the Keyword Planner now and the old keyword tool. This number being displayed right here is the exact search match monthly traffic count. And this is actually the local number that the keyword tool provided previously. And what I mean by local is that it's based on what you are targeting. So I have targeting up here for my country set to United States. So the count that Google is providing for me over here is the United States traffic for this particular phrase. But I could change my targeting to a different country, or even wipe out the country targeting completely and look for global traffic. And that's when I can actually retrieve the second number that the keyword tool used to provide, because they would give you a global count and a local count. Well, the keyword planner simplifies it all and just gives you one number based on what you are targeting over here on the left. The other main difference here with this number, if you were to compare this number, let's say you had just searched a phrase on the keyword tool and then you started using the keyword planner and you're like, well, the traffic here looks a little bit different to me. The traffic number that they're providing is actually a little different in the keyword planner than it was in the keyword tool. The main difference here is that Google is now including mobile traffic. Previously, if somebody used their cell phone or even a tablet and went to Google and performed a search for something, the keyword tool wasn't providing you guys with the traffic estimates for those particular searchers. It was just giving you desktop searchers. Well, the keyword planner now gives you everything, so it's really a more accurate gauge of the potential traffic that you could expect to receive on a site. The competition ranking over here, Peter's asking about, should you take any notice of the competition ranking? This competition ranking over here, it actually applies to Google AdWords. You can see that the keyword planner is actually a part of the Google AdWords system. The reason why they have the keyword planner is for their advertisers, really. If there weren't advertisers, if there was no Google AdWords, I really don't think that Google would provide any kind of keyword tool whatsoever. So you always have to keep that in mind, that this is being used for that purpose, or at least it was designed for that particular purpose. So the competition rank right here, and obviously the bidding that goes along with it, this is only relational to Google AdWords. So you could actually have a term that had high competition in Google AdWords, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the organic search results for that term will be high. They could be high. It could be a general indication as to whether the organic results might be tough to try to target or easier to target. However, typically when your traffic numbers are lower, a lot of marketers won't take the time to try to target them with organic search results. So while you could see high competition on this phrase, the actual competition on it might be considerably lower when it comes to the organic search results. So I do kind of look at the competition that's listed over here, Peter, but I don't necessarily use it as surefire proof, more or less, that the competition is one way or another. So one of the things that I want to point out here, this icon that shows up next to the keyword phrase, this icon is the search trends graph. This was something that was previously available in the keyword tool, but the actual data was much harder to retrieve. You actually had to download a spreadsheet file to be able to get the monthly traffic off of it. So in that regard, I absolutely love the keyword planner and the fact that they're providing this information right up front now. Now, on one hand, this could end up being bad because I've always depended on this particular information to actually find some of the best niches that I've ever gone after. And the reason for that is the average number that Google provides you here. It's really something that a lot of people focus on a little too heavily. They might come into the Google Keyword Planner and basically search all of their results from high to low. And they'll only focus on the higher results. So they might come in and only look at these 4 particular phrases. And everything that's below 500 or something, they completely ignore these. So what I'm looking for typically is something that has a lower monthly search count, but there could be something hidden to it that other marketers are actually missing. And one way that you can find that is with this search trend graph right here, because this tells you not just the average traffic for the last year, but it actually tells you month by month the exact traffic for each month of the year for the last year. So you can figure out how that average monthly count for the entire year actually translates into reality. You can figure out when you have certain months of the year where the niche might be more powerful than other months. And that happens with your seasonal niches. The down alternative comforter and down comforter niches, they're heavy blankets that people typically use during the winter time. So during the winter months and the colder months of the year, your traffic counts are considerably higher. So during November, on this particular search phrase, it has 880 monthly searches on it, but the average count for the entire year is only 390. So you're actually getting more than twice the average traffic during that particular month of the year. So this is one way that you can possibly get higher traffic but with lower search engine competition by targeting these lower traffic words. Now obviously with a phrase like this, when you have a seasonal phrase of any kind, you're not going to have this wonderful traffic all year long. There's a reason why the count says 390. When you have a month that is above 390, you likely have one or more that's probably below it. As you can see, these down at the bottom are actually 260 for the 2 low months of the year, which just happens to be during the middle of the summer when most people would not ordinarily go and buy this particular type of product. So obviously you're not getting that great benefit throughout the entire year, but if you're building multiple Amazon sites that you can build and work your way through pretty quickly and then move on to the next site, you can target a number of different seasonal niches and actually have a strong website throughout the entire year by simply having a couple different websites that are targeting different niches. Target something that's popular during the winter time, target other things that are popular during the summer. There's even spring and fall type of niches that you can go after. Niches for specific holidays throughout the year. The list really goes on and on. Beyond that though, you can actually sometimes find phrases where you have a trend graph going upward at a very steep pace. And it may not necessarily be a seasonal product. These are actually the best possible niches that you can go after because the average count for them is going to be considerably less than what the realistic monthly count is for the more recent months. And if your graph is low on the left and high on the right, and it's not a seasonal product, then it's a pretty good indication that that traffic could continue to rise in future months. So eventually the monthly count will show up as being much higher. But initially, when a product first comes out on the market, the phrases that are associated with those products will show a really low average monthly count, whereas the realistic traffic is many times higher than that number. And when you can latch onto those phrases in the first 6 to 9 months or so that they are out there, and before the actual monthly count is showing up as a more realistic number, then you can get some enormous traffic figures with really low competition to go along with it. Now, a lot of people might wonder, how could I actually find a product like that? It sounds almost like the Holy Grail in a way. Well, there's really a lot of different ways that you can go about it. But the easiest thing to think about is within any particular product industry, you have certain phrases that are used to describe basically a group of products. For example, you have for televisions very particular types based on their feature or design or whatever the case may be, like your HD TVs. They simply call them HD TVs. They might have another word or two associated with the particular type of that TV. But the whole point is, when a new kind of that product comes onto the market, it opens up a whole new world of keyword phrases for that particular product. So any niche or industry that you're interested in, simply monitor that industry and look for the new advancements, the new products that are coming out. And even better, if you can find out about them before they actually hit the market, is when you will really find yourself being able to attach yourself to a niche and not just make a decent amount of money off of it, but you can actually build single websites that make a killer amount of money. But it requires a lot of extra work that maybe not necessarily everybody would be interested in doing, especially for your first website. But I at least wanted to be able to discuss this information with you guys so you would have it in the future when you're looking for more advanced tactics that you can try to use. One particular way that you can find out about a product before it ever hits the market is simply go around and attend some conferences for that particular industry. Every year you have a big electronics convention, for example. By simply attending that conference and bringing a notepad with you and walking around and talking to all the different vendors, asking them what their new products are, writing down information about them, write down product names and model numbers and brands, take pictures of them if they will allow you to do so. Then you can come home and build websites surrounding the new types of products that are coming out. And you could even target particular products at that point if you have model names and model numbers and stuff. You may have heard about people targeting that sort of thing with their websites, and it does work, but the real thing is when you are actually trying to target those product names and model numbers. A lot of people simply assume they can go out there and target any product number or model number that's on Amazon, for example, and the traffic will come flowing into them. Well, the products that are already on Amazon, they obviously have a lot of affiliates that have seen those products and know about them and are likely targeting them already. But when you can find out the model number of a product before it ever hits Amazon, before it ever even is available in a retail store or anywhere online for that matter, and build a website about it, then when that product hits the market and is available on Amazon, you simply add an advertisement to your website, and then you already have a prime position in that market. You probably have great search engine rankings for that particular phrase already. So when it's available for sale, you can instantly start profiting from that. But the only way you can create a site like that successfully is by having that advanced knowledge. It's not something that you can really do with a ton of success by targeting what's already out there and what's already available. So at least some food for thought for the future when you decide that you are ready to try to get a little more advanced and a little more aggressive perhaps with your targeting methods. Then see what you can do in that area, see what you can find in the way of conventions and stuff that you could attend for particular industries. And you'll be one of the very few affiliates out there that actually has that information early, and that's super, super valuable information. This is actually a tactic that some of the best Amazon affiliates out there are practicing on a very, very regular basis. So it's definitely something that works if you have the time to actually put into doing something that extensive. Now, in addition to particular phrases that I can find in all of these different ad groups, I also have this Keyword Ideas tab over here. This really works in a very similar manner, whereas I have a list of keyword phrases and the traffic amounts for those phrases, but the big difference here is that Google is lumping all of this together. They're not organizing these phrases for me into different categories or ad groups. So this is a larger list. If perhaps I don't know what I'm looking for, maybe I could browse through this list to try to pick out some decent phrases. I could sort them by the traffic amounts and look in the particular range that I am trying to target and see if I could find a good phrase in that range that I could go after. But basically what I'm looking for is some kind of primary keyword phrase that I could use for my website. I want something that implies that I might be promoting products on the website, but I also want a phrase that doesn't necessarily come off as being a website solely dedicated to the sale of those products. For example, down comforter reviews. If you see downcomforterreviews.com listed in the search results, by simply glancing at that result, one of the first things that pops into my mind at least is, oh, this is going to be a website that has reviews on a bunch of different down comforters, and they're probably promoting those particular products to try to earn a commission off of them. So I immediately kind of dismiss a website like this as being incredibly helpful, unless I am looking for reviews on a very specific product within this niche. Otherwise, I'm typically looking for something that appears to be more helpful in nature, but might also have the potential to guide me along to what it is that I am looking to buy. So a lot of times I will end up targeting more informational phrases that are centered around my niche and try to set myself up as the middleman to educate the consumer, to help them decide on what the best product may be for their particular needs, and then send them along to complete that particular purchase. And this actually gives me different ways that I can go about trying to target traffic that would be interested in these products, different ways that I can bring people into the site, different keyword phrases that I could target, and obviously it gives me a better opportunity to create some rich content that people will actually find to be helpful instead of just a sales pitch to buy a product, basically. So the phrase I'm actually using is down comforter guide. This particular phrase has 480 monthly searches on it. So this isn't an enormous amount of searches, but the whole point is that there's going to be a ton of relational phrases within this particular niche that I can target on individual pages of my site. So it's not like I'm only getting 480 monthly searches on this website. It's really just my starting point, so to speak. And it also provides me with a phrase that summarizes my entire website. Now, a lot of people will be stuck with trying to find an exact match domain name. For example, if you're targeting down comforter guide, a lot of people will say, well, I need to have downcomforterguide.com then. The exact match domain names, while they are a little bit more powerful than just a standard domain name, that power has actually diminished a lot over the years. It's not really quite that simple anymore to just buy the exact match domain name, turn it into a website, and boom, you have all of your traffic. You actually have to build the website about that subject for Google to really recognize it. And then your exact match domain name simply gives you a little bit of a boost to your ranking, but it's not going to do all the work for you. So in that regard, if you have a keyword phrase that you really, really want to go after and you can't find the exact match domain name for it, just don't worry about it. Pick a different domain name. Go for something that perhaps has a particular keyword phrase in it, or a keyword that's part of your primary phrase, like down, for example, or even comforter. And I could use that word as part of a branded domain name for myself instead of simply using the entire keyword phrase. And it also gives me an opportunity to keep my domain name relational to my niche, so when people see my domain name, they still recognize it as being relational to what I'm trying to target. But then it also mixes things up a little bit and doesn't necessarily indicate to Google that my site is solely existing for that particular purpose. So either way you want to go, it's really okay. You are right there, Ruben. He said we don't see many EMD sites on the first page of Google anymore. I think it's really because the people that were going after the exact match domain names were more or less depending on that to get the rankings for them. And so then they would build these automated websites on the domain names. And I believe that's the real reason why they don't have the rankings, because I do have sites that are both non-exact match domain and also exact match domain sites, and they both perform equally as well. So I really don't see a fault in one or the other. Google will never entirely dismiss an exact match domain name, and there's a good reason why. And branding is the simple answer to that. Unless Google knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that a keyword phrase is not a brand name, they have to assume that somebody searching for that keyword phrase might be looking for that .com website. So in that regard, they have to at least give it a little bit of credit, but they have definitely gotten better in terms of picking out the ones that are just trying to fake it from the real websites. So, either way that you want to go is really okay. I mainly wanted to talk about this briefly, so those of you that maybe are focusing only on the exact match domain names, so you can be more confident in looking for something a little different, because it's not absolutely necessary to try to target. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to hop over to Google for a minute and talk to you guys about looking through the search results to try to gauge the competition. So all I'm going to do is just type in the keyword phrase that I'm trying to target here. So I've searched for down comforter guide, and what I'm looking for is immediately I'll go for kind of a quick competition gauge. I'll look at the different numbers that are provided for me below my search here, and this tells me how many approximate pages are indexed by Google that are essentially relational to this particular keyword phrase. So Google's telling me that it has about 933,000. Now, these numbers are only estimates. They're really never exact unless the numbers are considerably lower. So you don't have to necessarily take this as there's exactly 933,000 different pages on the internet that are about this particular term. It's just an estimate, really. Now, what I'm looking for, at least immediately, I don't necessarily want to target something that has millions upon millions of results. It is still possible to try to target those phrases, but typically you'll find that if you have too many results, that one or more of the words in your keyword phrase are too general. And so it makes your keyword phrase apply to many different other kinds of websites instead of just the one particular type that you're trying to target. So you may try switching some of your words around, substitute some of the phrases in your keyword for different words perhaps, and try to find something that is a little more specific to get your overall result count down. You definitely do not ever want to be targeting something that has 1 billion results or more. I've seen a lot of people do it, and it's really just a waste of time. So beyond this actual number right here, I can actually get a couple of other numbers from Google, and one of these I can get by simply adding quote marks around my keyword phrase. And this tells Google that I only want to see the pages that have this exact phrase somewhere in the content of the page. So this is a much more specific number and grouping of pages that I'm trying to get returned here. And as a result, I want to see a considerably lower number. Now for this one, I'm getting 17,600 results. So this is telling me that more or less this number of pages on the internet are kind of trying to target this particular phrase, or it's simply a common phrase that is used in natural language a lot. Well, when you're dealing with these product-specific types of keyword phrases, a lot of times they're not necessarily natural language speech, so you'll find that the result counts will be much, much lower. Now, I always want to see this number to be less than 100,000 at the absolute most. But if possible, I want this number to be as low as I can find it, because the lower this number is, the less overall competition I'm going to have on this keyword phrase. Now, this isn't exact. You can have some higher numbered result counts where the phrase will actually have lower competition. But in general, this is a really easy way that you can just perform a couple of quick searches and get at least some kind of a general idea without going into much more detail. Now, the next thing I'm going to do here to get one more number is I'm going to add the word all in title and then a colon right in front of my search phrase here. This is actually going to tell me how many different pages on Google have this particular phrase within the title of the page somewhere. So you can see every single result listed here has the title shown in the title of the actual page. So again, this is a more realistic count of the number of different pages on the internet that are actually trying to go for this particular keyword phrase. So I consider this to be a decent gauge of competition. Now, for this particular site, I'm actually targeting a lot of competition here. And the reason why I'm doing this is simply to see if I can do it. But when you're trying to build your sites, go for something, especially with your first website. Try to find something, if you can, a phrase that has 1,000, maybe 2,000 results for the all-in-title search, or even less if you can potentially find it. When you find one of those and you build a website surrounding that particular keyword phrase, you can get top 10 results by simply constructing the website. You don't have to do any additional marketing work in basically 99% of the situations. So it reduces the amount of overall work that you have to do. You don't necessarily have to continue on with marketing and building backlinks for the website just to try to get people to start coming to it. If you wanted to, you could simply build one site and move on to the next one, as long as you're targeting low enough competition with it. And again, don't worry about the overall traffic of your keyword phrase that you're targeting, because your website is going to consist of different pages, and each of those different pages can target additional keyword phrases in your niche that are relational to your primary keyword phrase. So even once you get a little more advanced and you get a little more comfortable with building these Amazon sites, still try to keep your primary keyword phrase that you're targeting with less than 10,000 results for the all-in title. Typically, once you top 10,000 results, you will have much stiffer competition. You have a lot more other marketers trying to go for that phrase, and typically you will have other major retail sites, for example, that are also going after that particular phrase. So again, just make sure the competition you're going after is low enough to actually give yourself a shot. Now, when you want to get a little more in-depth and find something out about the websites that you're actually going to be competing against, simply search for the keyword phrase and go through and browse the top 5 results or top 10 results or even top 20 or 30 results and see the amount of work that these sites are having to put in to successfully target this particular keyword phrase. It might not just be one page that they're building on their site. They might have an entire website or an entire section of their site devoted to this particular topic. Whereas other times you will find that it's just single pages that are ranking for the keyword phrase. So what you're looking for is a keyword phrase that is not being super heavily targeted on its own. You want it to kind of be a side thought of most of the websites that are targeting it. For example, some of these main websites, overstock.com for example, obviously they are not a website solely dedicated to a down comforter buying guide, but they have that on their site. It's simply a guide. Now, they probably have other parts of their site that are relational to this particular topic because they probably are promoting products that are relational to this particular topic. However, overall, they likely do not have a ton of content relating to this particular niche. Beyond the main sites, the obvious, major retailers like Overstock and Amazon and even the major informational sites like Wikipedia and stuff like that, what I'm really looking for when I'm browsing through these search results is some type of website that looks like it is completely dedicated to my particular niche. I want to see how they're doing, and I also want to see the amount of work that they have had to put in to get to where they are in the rankings. Now, one of the first sites that I've been able to find in these rankings that matches that particular description is this down buying guide site. This site has actually moved up some since I wrote the ebook for it not too long ago for this particular class, but the same concept really still applies. I could go and take a look at the website to try to see how much content they are offering on the subject and whether they have other pages on their site that are actually targeting this particular niche. And by essentially looking at what they have to offer and even counting the pages that they have built on their site, I can kind of use that as a general gauge to say, okay, well, if I want to do better than them, then I might have to beat that. So one way that I could find that, instead of just browsing through their site and counting the pages, is I can simply copy their domain name here and go up top to Google and type in the word site and then add a colon and then add the domain name that I want to look at. And by simply typing this in, Google will tell me how many pages of that website they have actually indexed. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that these are all of the pages on the entire site. It simply means these are the pages that Google has been able to find by crawling the website, and therefore it has indexed these pages and has the content stored in Google, and these pages can potentially show up in the search results. Any other pages that might exist on this website ultimately do not matter because they're not going to get direct search engine traffic, and Google is not using those pages as potential ranking to decide, where the site is going to end up getting placed. So only the pages that are shown for this particular search are going to end up being considered. So this is what I am trying to focus on. So 12 pages on this particular site really doesn't seem to be too bad. Now, you obviously have some other factors beyond just the number of pages that are on a site. You have backlinks that are out there. You also have the age of a domain name, for example. So there are some outside factors that you might need to consider. If you want the age on a domain name, just do a whois search. If you just type domain whois, WHOIS, all one word, into Google, for example, there's tons of websites that will actually allow you to look up the information, the registration information for a domain, and just look at the date that it was created on to get a general gauge of, how old that site is. Now, in addition to that, for backlinks, you can replace the word site up here with the word link and perform this search. And this will tell you not necessarily how many total backlinks are found for the website, but it'll tell you how many links Google has indexed for this site. So these would be like do follow links. It's not going to pick up the no follow links, and it really won't even show you all of the do follow links here. These are really just what Google would more or less consider to be the more important links that this website has. So go and look at where they're getting links from. You may even be able to get links to your own website from these same websites. And if it's working for one of these sites, it can very well work for your site too, because within any given niche, you have all of these specialty sites, and you can really never know about all of them. But what you can do is simply investigate your competition and figure out where they're getting their links from. And especially not just links period, but the links that Google will actually recognize as being quality links for you. So an easy way to kind of gauge your competition, compare the pages on these sites, compare their links, compare the age of the domain name, obviously with whatever your plans may be with your own site too. And just ask yourself, can I beat this? And typically, you will want to do a little bit better than they have done to try to beat them. Don't just try to build one additional page on your site and say, okay, well, that'll be enough. I topped them by one. You definitely want to do considerably better than they have done. So just see if the niche you're thinking about targeting is actually within your reach or not. Because if you're finding that it's taking other websites 500 or 1,000 pages, and you go to that website and those pages are obviously unique content and not some kind of rehashed product information page, for example, then it's a really good indication that you would basically kill yourself trying to create enough content to try to rank for that phrase. So you want to see that there are other sites out there able to get at least somewhere close to where you're trying to get in the rankings, without having to do an enormous amount of work to actually get there. Now, the next thing that I typically do, once I have gone through and done some Google research on my niche, I can find out a little bit more long-term information about this particular niche by going to Google Trends. This is google.com/trends. Now, this actually used to be called Google Insights. They have replaced Insights with Trends since I first started using it. But it's really a more in-depth system now. They have, like these hot searches and stuff on here, particular keyword phrases that people are heavily searching for on a given day. And they actually tell you like search counts that go along with them. Now, you don't necessarily want to go on here and go after one of these hot searches because there's going to be tons of people that are going after this kind of stuff. However, it really kind of helps to give you a general idea of exactly what it would take to try to pick up some trending traffic, basically, for a hot search. Almost all the time, people are searching for things relational to the news. So if you can ever find anything in the news being talked about that has anything to do with your niche, that can be an excellent opportunity to just create an additional page of content on your site to try to target that particular news. What you can do is just basically write an opinion-based piece on that news story. I've actually created entire websites before that solely exist for that one idea. You can watch your local news channel, for example, and any given topic that they talk about on the news, if you were to create a website for perhaps your local city and create a page about whatever that news story was, and you don't copy the news story, but you just give your own opinion on it, you can actually build within a couple of weeks a site that's getting hundreds of daily visitors that way. Now, obviously, it's kind of hard to relate that to Amazon products unless you're being kind of picky with the news stories that you are covering, and only selecting things that are relational that give you a way to kind of take people from that news story and send them off to a sale. But this really isn't the real reason why I use Google Trends. It's just an extra potential benefit to mention to you guys. But the real thing that I use it for is to gauge the long-term viability of my particular niche. And the way that I do that is by going in here, and I could just start by searching for my primary keyword phrase that I'm going to be targeting. And this will show me traffic based on this particular keyword phrase, but it's not just from this particular year. It'll actually show you previous years as well. Now, if you're searching a phrase like this phrase, Down Comforter Guide, and maybe the traffic doesn't look quite right on it, you always need to consider what phrase it is that you're actually searching for, and whether this phrase truly represents the product industry that you're trying to target, or whether it's just representing a particular idea within that industry. Down Comforter Guide doesn't necessarily reflect the overall popularity of down comforters. However, if I were to search for just down comforter, for example, this would actually be a little more realistic for me. You can see that I get traffic results going all the way back to, it's actually 2004 here at the beginning of this graph. So you can see that as this phrase continued to improve here for these few years, right at the beginning of the graph, it took a major hit right around this time, which is actually when a lot of worldwide economy started slumping downward. And you can actually kind of tell that more recently here in the last couple of years that the niche seems to be improving again. It seems to be recovering a lot of its former strength and is actually on the increase. Now obviously I'm talking about like the peaks and the down points of my graph here, because this is a seasonal phrase, so it's always going to be going up and down like this. So not only can I tell up here whether my niche might have long-term viability to it, whether it is on the rise or on the decline, but I can also find out some information that might help me target the people that are interested in this product by looking at the information that is found down below. It tells me regional interest right here, different countries, and I can even look at a specific country and get cities where this specific product is more popular. So if I wanted to try to run advertising, for example, or if I was perhaps trying to target news stories or local markets or something like that with a website that I was building, I could do so by finding out the regional interest here. If I was going after a niche that had a ton of competition in it, let's say I was going after the term cars. That's probably a little too general, but it will make a good example at least for what I'm talking about here. Obviously, you couldn't build a website about cars and have any hope of getting in the top 10 of Google because you have tons and tons of competition, an enormous amount of competition, and the competition you have has really large budgets to try to beat the other competition. So if you really wanted to target something within a niche like that, all you have to do is get as specific as you possibly can with it. Instead of just targeting cars, target a particular kind of car. Get even more specific and target a particular model or target a particular part on the car. If you have drilled down your niche enough and you still feel like the competition is too high for it, one potential thing that you can do is to target that niche regionally. Go after a particular city that would be interested in that particular niche. And this is how you can find out the best cities to try to target for that particular purpose. Now, in addition to that, down at the bottom here, you have some more really great information. This tells you some of the most popular relational niches for this particular search term. And over on the right here, it also tells you not only the most popular niche or search terms relational to this, but these are actually the trending search terms, the ones that are rising in popularity. And it gives you a percentage over here. Now, just because it has a high percentage doesn't necessarily mean there's a ton of traffic to it. For example, a search phrase that perhaps had 10 people that searched for it in any given month. If it increased by 600%, it would only be 70 monthly searches still. So you always need to consider how the percentage actually translates into a real search traffic level. And you could do that by taking a keyword phrase here and bringing it back into the keyword planner to get the actual traffic for it. And these might be your potential keyword phrases that show a lower amount of traffic right here, but their trend graphs can actually be moving upwards. So down alternative comforter, for example, this is plus 750%. So this is obviously a market that is rising in popularity extremely fast, and it's relational to the niche that I'm trying to target. So sometimes I'll reach this point in my research and be like, you know, that niche that I wanted to go after, it was a good niche, but something like this could end up being even better, possibly. So I sometimes might make a last-minute switch and decide to go after something more particular. Instead of down comforters, down alternative comforters, this is actually a little bit more specialized within the niche too, something that I like to do. The more specialized and specific you get with your niche, then the lower your competition is going to be typically. So if I just take this phrase over here and search for it. I've not done this previously, but I'm just curious to see what it will show me here for this particular phrase. So the most popular one, down alternative comforter, it's showing up as having 5,400 monthly searches on it. Now when I look at the insight, the trends graph for it right here, it doesn't necessarily indicate that this phrase is rising in popularity. But this rising popularity is likely happening annually and not actually monthly. As you can see when I search for this phrase, even during the bad economy years right in here, this phrase was still improving. And since the economy has improved again, it's actually starting to shoot up even more drastically than it was doing before. So this has led me to another potential niche that I could go after, down alternative comforters. That shows a huge potential in growth here. And I could then, continue on, do even more research about this niche to try to figure out some of the best keywords that I could target within that particular niche, and even whether there might be some other trending phrases that relate to it. Now, if you click on a particular country right here, for example, you can see I clicked on the United States for this particular search. It will give me the individual states even that are more popular for this particular type of product. So if I wanted to target by state or by a metro area or by city perhaps, it doesn't always give you enough information. It has to have enough data available to actually be able to build these graphs for you down here. But a lot of times you really can get some great information that you could use to try to target particular regions for any given product. And this is really a lot of things like region targeting, something that the average affiliate does not even think about doing for the most part. So if you can find a good niche like this that you could target regionally, you'll really sidestep a huge portion of the competition. And in fact, the competition might even remain low potentially years into the future. Because it's just not something that the average person really thinks about when they're trying to go after a niche. They typically do it on a more general basis than they do getting really specific with what they're trying to find. Now, the next thing that I'm going to be going on to is actually domain name hunting and selection. I had already talked to you guys some about exact match domain names and using them, or whether you don't want to use them and go for perhaps a simply a branded domain name, something that has one of your relational keywords within it, but maybe you're not targeting the entire keyword phrase simply in your domain name. However, for those of you that are looking for exact match domain names, I actually have a particular strategy that I like to use where I can hunt for hundreds of these exact match domain names in really a short period of time. So just to show you guys how this works, if I come over here to my Google Keyword Planner and I've searched for a keyword phrase and I come over here to the Keyword Ideas tab and it has all these keywords for me, you can see right here in the parentheses that Google tells me how many keywords it is displayed. It's 801. This is actually the maximum number that the keyword planner will return. So it's 800 phrases that it tells you plus the one phrase that you were actually searching for here. Well, what you can do is just come up here and click on this download button right here. And this will allow you to download these 800 keyword phrases. So what I can do is simply choose the Excel CSV. This is comma separated value. This is basically a spreadsheet file. And just download the file. And all I have to do is view this particular file on my computer now, and I have access to all of that information. But the best part about it is that I can actually use this to help me hunt for a exact match domain name. Let's see. Could have swore I just told this to open. Okay, here it is. It's back behind here because I have this presentation open. I did this incorrectly. Now, if you look down here, I'm actually using openoffice.org. Well, it's just OpenOffice, but if you need to download a copy, you can get it from openoffice.org. This is a free open source software. It's basically just like Microsoft Office, so you have the different, the word processor and the spreadsheet program and the PowerPoint presentation type of software in it, and it's all completely free instead of having to pay a bunch for it. Well, this page right here, this is importing this particular comma separated value file into OpenOffice. Well, if you look down below here, all these little arrows, you can see that this is actually all the information that is contained within this particular file here. Well, the main problem is that this is all being grouped together. I actually need to select the tab as being the separator for this information. And you can see after I do that, that it actually groups this information correctly into columns for me. So once I have done that, I have my spreadsheet file now that is contained filled with all of these different keyword phrases. So what I can actually do is if I wanted to sort them perhaps like by average monthly searches, for example, I could simply select my column and sort everything. And so maybe I didn't want to go after the really, really low phrases, and maybe I didn't want to go after the really, really high phrases either. So let's say I just wanted to search maybe starting around here and I don't know, go through perhaps 200 monthly searches. So all I have to do is select the keyword phrases here and simply make sure that I don't have more than 500 of them selected at a time, and just copy them. And what I'm going to do next is open up a notepad file and just paste all of these keyword phrases into this file. Now I'm going to simply replace spaces. You can see I entered in a space right here. I'm going to replace spaces with absolutely nothing. And this actually shortens my keyword phrases into single words. Now, this typically is all I need to do. Every now and again, you'll have a keyword phrase in here like comforters.com. This actually doesn't work, so I will typically scan through and just make sure I don't have anything like that left in my list. So now that I'm done with all that, I take this keyword phrase list after it's been modified, and I simply go over to GoDaddy with that. Give me just a second here and get GoDaddy loaded up. Now, once I'm on GoDaddy, all I have to do is go to this little bulk search text link right here, and I click on it, and then I just paste my entire list into GoDaddy. And then I can just go over here and select .com and click on the Go button. And now GoDaddy is automatically going to search through all of these different domain names for me, and it will tell me the ones that are unavailable, and then it will also tell me which ones actually are available. So you can see here that all of these different domain names, 65 of them in just this one list, are all available for registration, the exactmatchdomain.com. So I just found 65 of them with, what'd that take, 5-10 minutes tops worth of work. So you can repeat this process for any given niche to find exactly what you're looking to find if you are wanting to hunt down these exact match domain names to use. Now, obviously, if you're not wanting to use the exact match domains, that's quite all right. You can just take one of the primary words in your keyword phrase and use that as part of your domain name. So I could have created a website called the Down Emporium or something like that. It really doesn't matter whatever other words you add in to your keyword phrase. Just try not to pick a word that really has a meaning to it that isn't relational to your niche anymore. For example, I wouldn't really want to create a site called like downteam.com because it kind of implies it to be something different than what it really is. It's like it's implying it to be some kind of sports organization or something instead of what I'm actually going after. So in terms of a branded domain name, that's really my one recommendation. Just make sure whatever branded domain name you go after, just make sure it fits with the niche that you are trying to target. Does anybody have questions at this point for me on anything that I've covered so far? A lot of you guys have been quiet this evening, so I thought I would at least pause for a moment and see if anybody would like to ask me something on anything I've covered so far, or even on something else relational that you might be wondering about. And if not, then I will go ahead and continue here. All right. I want to backtrack for just a few minutes here and go back to the keyword planner for just a moment so I can talk about a few things that I kind of passed over the first time around. Now, the entire point, right, that's a good point, Rhonda. Back on this page, I assume. Those EMDs seem too specific for a whole website. I would probably agree. Many of them are, but it really just depends on what you're trying to go after. Basically, what I recommend to do with picking a website name or just a general niche that you're going to be using for your website, you do want something that is kind of specific in a way, because you want to be able to build approximately a 20-page website and be able to cover all of the potential topics, or at least what most people would be interested in learning about a topic throughout those 20 pages. Otherwise, if you find that a topic is so extensive that it would require hundreds of pages perhaps for worth of content for you to actually address all of the topics within that particular niche, I really find those to be a little bit too general, and so I try to stay more specific in those regards. And that helps a lot with the competition, because the more specific you get, the less likely chance you run into that other websites are targeting that exact same niche as you. Obviously, if for this niche, like if I were to build a website just targeting comforters, period, the amount of competition, any website out there that's promoting or talking about comforters at all would be my competition. And that could be a million different websites or people or companies. So as I get more and more specific, that number doesn't, or that number actually improves. So obviously I want something specific enough to reduce the amount of competition, but then again, I want something that still leaves enough room for me to build a website, because there are a lot of topics in here, even potentially, where it might be too specific to the point where you couldn't even build a 20-page site on that topic without having to repeat your information, for example. And yes, there are some, like gray targeting a particular color, graydowncomforter.com. Probably wouldn't be the best thing to try to go after. Just glancing through this list right here, I could probably pick out at least some. Obviously, some people would be interested that are more interested in just going after products instead of creating useful, informative content for people. A website like Down Alternative Comforter Reviews.com would probably make for a great site. You also have things like Down Alternative Throw. Could potentially be, I don't know, that might be a little bit too specific, possibly. It's hard to say. Just glancing through this one particular list, I could at least pick out at least a few different sites that would be potential good niches to try to target. I typically don't do .NET websites, Ruben. If it's a good keyword phrase and the .com website is taken, what I will typically do is go to Google and search for that phrase and try to see if that domain name is ranking, especially if it's somewhere in the top 10 results, for example, because I don't want another website specifically targeted to that same idea that I'm going after in it to already have the exact match domain and to have itself established in the top 10 of Google. I feel like in that situation, I'm better off going for a different keyword phrase, because that site will always be a primary source of competition for whatever site I would build alongside of it. However, if you can't find the .com domain name actually ranking, or maybe the site was never even constructed or something, the person just registered the domain and maybe it's parked, what I would likely do is go after a more of a branded domain name. Find, a word or two within your keyword phrase and pick it out and, add in an additional word or two to it. Typically, I try to keep my domains 3 words long or less whenever possible, but obviously you have particular niches that simply cannot be described in less words than that. Now, another major thing that I really need to mention here involving domain names that a lot of people do is brand name targeting in domain names. If you look down here, PacificCoastDownComforter.com or IKEADownComforter.com, these are domain names that are obviously receiving keyword traffic on this keyword phrase. However, the words in the domain name are actually, or at least partially, a brand name. Pacific Coast is a down bedding company. IKEA is obviously a major international brand. No. You don't. You actually a lot of times you can find these brands actually on Amazon. So you may not have to set up different affiliate accounts to try to target them. But the real thing that you want to make sure that you don't do is actually register one of these domains. If you registered PacificCoastDownComforter.com and you built a website on that domain name and it got really, really popular and you started making all kinds of money on it, all Pacific Coast would have to do is have their lawyer send you a letter, and you would have to turn over that entire website to them. And in fact, they could even sue you for anything that you've made off of that website because you're infringing on their copyright for their brand name by using it in a domain name. When it's in the domain name itself, or even in a subdomain name, so you can't do PacificCoast.DownComforter.com. The only way you can target it is you could do downcomforter.com/Pacific Coast and build a directory or a single page on your site for that particular brand. But in terms of targeting a brand name in your domain name or your subdomain name, it's a major, major no-no. You always want to avoid that because it can be appealing. It is a way that some people can successfully get search engine traffic and convert them into sales, but it's simply not legal and does not offer a reliable way to make a long-term income. So I want to make absolutely sure that all of you guys understand that point, because I see a lot of affiliates making these types of websites, and a lot of times they'll figure it out, when it's too late. So targeting brands and product names, model numbers, and stuff like that, it is okay to do. You just have to be careful about how you go about doing it. Target them on specific pages of your site and not just your entire site, because when you have the brand name in your domain name, you're basically implying to your site visitors that you're connected with that brand name, that you're associated with them in some way, or maybe that it's even like an official website. So it's viewed as being a deceptive marketing practice, in addition to the fact that it's copyright infringement too. So, definitely be careful as far as that type of stuff goes. You're quite welcome, Ruben. Not something that anybody really needs to have to worry about as far as that kind of thing goes. Now, jumping back over to the keyword planner here for just a few minutes. What I will actually do when I have my niche and I'm trying to come up with keyword phrases for it is I'll open up a notepad on my computer, or a lot of times just use a notebook or just a spare piece of paper and an actual pen. And yeah, they still exist and actually use them a lot. Write down stuff that looks like it could be a good fit. It's better to have a list that is too large and you can simply go back in at a later point in time and try to narrow down your list than it is to not have enough ideas. But basically what I'm looking to do is to come up with a primary keyword phrase that I can use for my site, whether it ends up being my exact match domain name or whether I go for a branded domain name, it doesn't matter. I still pick a primary keyword phrase for my website. And then what I'm looking to do is find additional secondary phrases that I can target on my site. These would be phrases that I target on additional pages of my website. So like on Down Comforter Guide, for example, I could have pages about different sizes. I see like they have twin keyword phrases here and queen keyword phrases here. I could have different pages about different types of down, for example. I can see that there are a lot of like goose down related keyword phrases, and there would likely be other keyword phrases relational to that as well, different kinds of down feathers. I could even extend outward from the comforters slightly on my website and try to target some other relational products like pillows or duvets. I could go after particular types of this product, like lightweight down comforters. Obviously, people, when they search for particular things, are often in search of a specific type of product, but not only that, but they're looking for something that solves a general need. So, people that are looking for lightweight down comforters are probably people that love down comforters maybe, but perhaps they have a big thick one that they use during the winter, and once the weather starts getting warm, it simply doesn't work anymore. So they want something a little more lightweight. So, try to think about why people are searching for these phrases and which ones would actually make for good content on your site, and not just a way to target a product, but actually to give you things that you can discuss and talk about and write about and provide pictures for on your site. Because it's more than just going after keyword phrases. It's about actually providing the information that people are looking to find when they type in that keyword phrase. And when you can accomplish that goal, you're giving Google what they want. You're giving your your searchers and the traffic that actually visits your site, you're giving them what they want. And in the end, you get what you want as well by satisfying everybody and getting the traffic and turning them into commissions. So what I actually want you guys to be doing for next week, or at least in between this week and next week for the class, is just to go through the Google Keyword Planner and to come up with a list of relational topics that you could potentially target on your site. One way you can do that is by just getting the general topics off of these ad group ideas, or you could get it from specific keyword phrases that are within those ideas, or even get standalone keywords from this additional list over here. But basically just try to come up with a potential list of topics. This isn't something we're setting in stone here. It's really just some initial work that we are doing, and next week we will actually be going into more detail with that and kind of taking that list and actually planning our entire website off of that list. Peter, is there a range of search numbers that are ideal for selecting these keywords? I'm typically looking for, again, lower competition keyword phrases, something in between maybe 200 searches a month upwards to perhaps 1,000 searches a month. However, if there is an idea that or a topic that is highly relational to your primary keyword phrase that you're going to be targeting on your website, don't be afraid to build a page for it on your own website, knowing good and well that you'll never get a search ranking with that page. There's really nothing wrong with that. And in fact, actually encourage people to build at least a couple pages on their site where they have absolutely zero expectation of getting any kind of search traffic to it, because it's really more natural. You have to consider Google gets to look at not just your website or a limited group of websites, but they get all the websites. And they have really, really advanced programming to analyze all this stuff for them. And so they have kind of more or less figured out what is natural when it comes to language. So they're looking for websites to be built in a more natural way. And when they see a website built off of strictly nothing but keyword phrases that are coming out of the keyword planner, I believe they view that to be unnatural, basically. So I try to kind of mix it up a little bit and target some things that are expected for me to be targeting, and then also targeting some additional, still relational information, but not necessarily based on any particular keyword phrases. Sorry to hear about that, Clinton. If you end up having questions for me, after watching the recording for that video, for example, please feel free to get in touch with me on Facebook, any of these addresses, or if it's something that you don't necessarily need to discuss privately with me, I'm more than happy in my Facebook group here to answer any questions you may have in detail. And this really applies to anybody that's in this class period. It doesn't necessarily, you don't have to miss a live class. You're welcome, more or less, to ask me questions. You know, if you're just watching a recording and you have some questions about it, or even later tonight you're thinking about things from this class and you want to ask me something, you know, please feel free to drop me a line. I don't mind at all. Let's see, Rhonda, if I wanted to sell coordinating sheets to the comforters, would I sell it on the same website or have a link out to a different website? I would probably sell them on the same website. Obviously, if my focus was not just promoting the comforters, but also promoting those coordinating products, I want that to kind of be something kind of on the back burner, you know, something that doesn't receive most of the focus on the website. I think as long as you keep the focus on your primary product, then those other relational things that you might throw in here and there in certain places where it fits, it doesn't harm you in terms of keeping your site relational to the primary topic that you're trying to target, for example. In fact, it can actually help to improve that. I believe Google these days especially has kind of evolved into a really, really powerful semantic reader, basically, to where you type in the word comforter and Google doesn't just look for sites that have the word comforter on it. They look for sites that have other words that are commonly used when people are talking about comforters on it. So when you're talking about comforters, especially if you leave out that word completely, describe your subject without using your targeted words. Basically is kind of how I like to look at writing my content and trying to target these keyword phrases, because Google doesn't want to see you just repeat your keyword phrase over and over again. They want to see that you have a page that is about that keyword phrase. And one of the easiest ways to accomplish that is to talk about that subject without actually saying it. You know, pretend like it's one of those like Pictionary games or something where you have to describe something but you can't say what it actually is. So in that regard, sheets, for example, is a word that somebody would probably commonly say when talking about comforters, because they'd be talking about their bed and pillows and sheets and duvets and other things that are relating to that particular topic. So in that regard, I definitely say keep it on the same site, Rhonda. As long as it's relational and fits with your targeted topic there, I definitely think it's something to go for, and really helps to make it more natural too. Oh, you're quite welcome. Michael, I won't state what you are asking me here publicly, just so I don't share what you may potentially go after with the entire group. But the domain name that you have picked out there, I would not. Well, I would kind of say it's a little too general, perhaps. But really, it's kind of the last part of the domain that I would be looking to scratch out. I try to avoid using stop words in my domain, like the word for, towards the end of domain, the domain that you stated there. A stop word is basically any word that really doesn't have true meaning to it, that doesn't actually talk about something or describe whatever the subject is. So words like a, the, for, and, or, anything along those lines basically would be considered a stop word. So I typically avoid domain names with a stop word, especially for an exact match domain. There really does not seem to be a lot of benefit at all to getting an exact match domain that has a stop word in it. So I would recommend a different domain there. And if you can, try to get a little more specific. I don't know what for that particular type of product, what kind of keyword traffic might be available for it. But as long as it's not too low already, try to find a particular type of that product in your domain name there, and see if you can't get a keyword phrase and even a domain name related to that type of product. Maybe there's an additional word, like a descriptive word, that could be added on to the first 3 words of your domain name there to go along with it, to get a little more specific and also to help eliminate that stop word there. You're welcome. Any other questions that you guys may have for me? Please feel free to ask anything you might be curious in learning. No, I don't think that is too general, Clinton. As long as you get something specific within that niche to try to target. Like, don't just target one particular kind. Like you listed 3 different kinds there. Instead of just targeting one of those kinds in general, I would imagine that within each of those categories you could probably have a number of different subcategories, possibly even different skill levels. You could have, like, beginners or experts or intermediates or something to that effect, to try to take a more generalized niche and make it a little bit more specific. especially if perhaps you couldn't find great keyword phrases to go along with it, or maybe it's a kind of product where there aren't different specific types to it. You can use kind of skill level descriptive words like beginner, for example, to try to target more specific areas of a niche that's typically considered to be general. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Sounds like what you're thinking is right on track then. And really, within doing it that way, then just like the 3 quick examples you gave right there, you could probably come up with, I don't know. I mean, I don't actually know much about that particular niche myself, but depending on how many different kinds you had for each of those types, you could potentially create 10, 20, 30 different websites about just those 3 topics right there by just breaking it down into more specific topics. Any other questions that you guys? You're quite welcome, Clinton. I know a lot of times that helps people that are maybe already have knowledge about a particular subject, and perhaps they don't want to learn new things about a different type of niche every time they want to build a site. If you already have knowledge about a niche, sometimes you can create numerous different websites to target that niche and just target a very specific part of that niche with each individual website. And obviously, if all of your websites are relational, you can link them up to each other. However, don't just link all your Amazon sites together if they don't have anything to do with one another. But if they are relational, I think that fits and actually is helpful for both your visitors and even for like a search engine that is trying to crawl your site and try to figure out what kind of website it is, basically. So again, if once you guys actually pick out your primary keyword phrase, for next week's class, if you are trying to, actually build a site during the course of this particular program, while I actually walk you guys through all of this, next week, just try to have a listing together from the keyword planner of different particular topics that might be potential topics that you could talk about on your site, things that relate to your primary keyword phrase. And basically what we're going to do next week is take those topic ideas and try to organize them and come up with a complete plan for our website. I actually like to know ahead of time what all of my websites are going to be about, down to each individual page on my site. So I'll know if I'm building 20 pages on this website, I know what every single page is going to be talking about. And this helps me to create a more useful site for my visitors, and it also gives some structure and organization to it in a way that can help my search rankings on top of it. So we'll be getting this again into more detail next week, but as long as you get that list together for next week's class, then you should be able to continue following along with me here. You're quite welcome, Clinton. Glad I could help out there. Any other questions that any of you may have? If you have would like to run your potential niche by me real quick just to see what I think about it or something, I don't mind at all. I try to avoid sharing that information here in the public class with everyone else, just simply because I don't want somebody to be like, oh, that sounds like a great idea, and try to copy it, because that's more competition for you. So, you don't have to worry about me sharing anything like that with other people in the group. I try to talk about those things in a more generalized nature while still trying to help you out with what it is you're looking to get help with. If nobody has any additional questions, I believe I've covered everything that I need to talk to you guys about this week. Next week's class will actually be at the end of this week. It is Saturday, October the 12th, and that will also be at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just like the rest of the classes in this particular series. Let's see, Rhonda. I think there would be a lot of competition in that particular niche. A lot of relational types of products typically do have a lot of competition. I think the same thing would kind of apply that I've mentioned to others that have asked about their niche so far. Basically try to find something very particular, a particular type of one of those products, something that you can describe with a keyword or two really easily, that goes along with that. And that way, if you know a lot about that subject, you can target a bunch of different, yes, something like that. And even sometimes, if that's still too much competition, you can sometimes get even a little more specific. I really don't know a lot about that particular niche personally, but with that second example that you provided there, sometimes you may even be able to get even more specific than that. There might be different kinds of that particular type of that product, and so it really just depends on how large of a market or industry it is, and also how much relational information is surrounding that. Like if you wanted to teach people, somebody like me, for example, that doesn't know anything about those particular types of products, if you wanted to teach me about those products, how many different topics can you come up with that I would actually need to know about to be able to reliably select one of those products for my own needs? And even then, I might not know what those needs are. That can be additional areas of content that you could target there, for example. The different purposes that people would use those products for. So basically, if you feel like you could cover whatever niche you've come up with, cover all those different ideas and topics and stuff, the information that people would want to know about it, if you can cover all that, within a 10 to 20 page website or so, you should be good, because obviously you'll have some additional pages on the site that might be for a specific product, whereas you have other pages on the site that might target the ideas relating to that product. But it sounds like you're on the right track there, Rhonda. You would just want to verify that whatever selection you go for, that it's specific enough to eliminate a lot of the competition for you, especially within that particular niche or anything relating to that. Can often be a heavy competition niche. Anything, I'll send this privately, anything like that, basically, your competition will often be much higher than other types of industries, for example. If you come up with something in particular, that you'd like me to take a look at having to do with that, Rhonda, um, you know, feel free to contact me privately. I could get into a little bit more detail for you there. I just, I don't want to share what your potential niche could end up being with the rest of the group, though. Um, any other questions from any of you other guys out there? You're quite welcome, Rhonda. Hope that was helpful for you. If there are no additional questions, can go ahead and call it a night here. I guess I got just a couple of minutes left here that I was trying to fill up for you guys if you had questions for me. Some of these classes are a little longer than others. Today's actually, I think, one of the shorter classes throughout the whole series. Others can even stretch closer to 3 hours long. So it just kind of depends. I won't sit here and ramble on about the same thing over and over again just to fill up time for you guys, though. Feel free to ask questions that you may have, and if not, get in touch with me later if you'd like to run something by me, any one of these places. I'd be more than happy to, and I will be seeing all of you guys that can make it next week, Saturday, October the 12th at 7 p.m., and I will have the recording from tonight's class put up for you guys late this evening or